Hello and welcome to the Audiobook Club. In this week's episode, we're so lucky to be joined by actor and Quinn creator Tom York. Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the show. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so chuffed to be chatting with you today. You know, as I said right at the start of us joining this call, I'm a huge admirer of your work, and I have been for quite a while. So it's really nice to get to meet you and get to have a chat.
I think that's the first time anyone has ever said that to me, so thank you. That's so lovely.
That can't be true. I don't believe it. So, as is tradition on this show, I'd really like to start with a huge question, which may be very difficult to answer. But essentially, it's how acting and performing found its way to you. Like, you know, I read somewhere that you began acting classes like super young in like the Netherlands.
Oh my
Is
gosh,
that?
yeah, I don't know how you found that, but yes. Well, basically, what happened was, when I was 5 years old, my dad's work moved to the Netherlands, and so we, as a family, obviously went there, and I didn't really have any hobbies, yeah, and I think my mom wanted me to have something to do after school, at least some days a week. So I was never very coordinated, really. So sports were a bit off the track for me. So. She found this like drama class thing, and I went along, and I just ended up having a great time. And we worked up and did like Lambda exams and things, as you
Yeah.
do when you're a young guy who wants to do some acting. And I ended up doing, there was an American amateur theatre group that, as far as I know, they're still there over in the Netherlands, but they put on a pantomime every year. And so from a very young age, I was in the chorus of that pantomime. And I just remember having the best time, backstage with a bunch of other young kids, getting up to mischief, eating, takeout food and getting all nervous and excited about going on stage for a few shows. And I remember just thinking, this is the best place to be. And really that's where it got its hooks into me. And then obviously from there I went on and I did it at school and I had some amazing teachers. I went to a school up in York called Queen College, and
Yeah.
I had some amazing teachers there who really pushed me, believed in me. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll try and get into drama school. I know that the chances are almost zero, but I'll try. And I managed to get into LAMDA, the London Academy of Music Dramatic Art, and I went there for 4 years in total. I did a little foundation year
Yeah.
first, and yeah, and then I was lucky. I got a really good agent in my final year, and then I went on to work, and
Yeah.
that's 10 years later of that career, here I am chatting to you today.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, like that Lambda, how transformational was that? Experience for you. 4 years you're with people who are really taking it seriously. This is their career, and in future. Like, how transformational was that for you?
Yeah, it was massive. But it was funny because I was used to being the biggest fish in my little pond at my college or school or whatever. I was leading the school plays and everything. And suddenly here I am at one of the, best institutions in the world for teaching actors
Mm,
and practicing actors. And yeah, and there were all these people who I was so intimidated by. I just thought they were all incredible.
mm,
And I really wanted to live up to that. And yeah, it took me the first couple of years. Well, the first couple of years when I was on the 3 year course with all these guys who come straight from school, they're walking chest up, proud, first time try into school, and I was intimidated by them.
mm,
But over time, I found my place. I found what I was good at, and
mm.
yeah, not really looked back since then.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. So, like, you featured. So after Lambda, you featured in some tremendously cool TV shows. It's like tremendously cool, and I think I'd be shouted at by a lot of people if I didn't ask you about Poldark straight off the bat. Like, how did that come about? Because that's huge.
Yeah, it was massive. I I got originally there were two brothers
Mm,
in the show when for season three, which is when I joined the brothers of
mm,
Demelza, who's the lead female character played by Eleanor Tomlinson. and there was Drake and Sam, and I think everyone auditioned for both brothers, and there was the romantic lead, which was Drake, and then there was the zealoted Methodist preacher brother Sam, who I immediately fell in love with just because he
Yeah.
was so out there, and as a young guy, it was so far away from anything else, any other audition that I'd really seen.
Mhm.
It tended to be, ingenue, young, trying to be a hero type characters, or sort of romantic lead. Here was this guy who had no interest in romance. It was, he had the word of God and that he was going to spread it. And I just thought it was such an opportunity to, try and get into a completely different frame of mind, which
Mhm.
is what I love about acting. It's really trying to put
Mhm.
yourself in other people's shoes.
Mhm.
And I was very, very, very lucky. I had to do lots of rounds, and oh my gosh, the wait after my final audition. Firstly, I think the wait for the second round audition was months. I thought it had gone away. I just thought, oh,
Mhm.
you do a bunch of auditions as an actor, and it's just another one that's flown off into the ether. And then they got back in touch,
Mhm.
and after I did my final one, I think I had to wait 6 weeks, and I knew I was close. And I kept like I was that really annoying actor who kept messaging his agent, just saying, if you hear anything at all, I know you would let me know, obviously, but please, if you do know anything at all, please put me out of my misery.
Yeah.
And I still remember to this day, there is nothing better. There really is nothing better than getting that phone call. You
Mm.
know, it, and I had a terrible one, which was right before Poldark. I got I got a phone call from my agent, and I picked up like, oh my God, this is it. And he was like, the first thing he said, this is not about Poldark. I was like, okay. I had to calm myself down, and then I had another audition to go to. But when I finally got that call, I remember it was just like, yeah, it was amazing because I knew it was a great show. I knew it had great actors in it. I knew it was really popular. It was again this transformative role that I was going to get to experience for potentially 3 years, which is what it ended up being. And
Mm.
yeah, yeah, it was just the most amazing moment.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. 6 weeks when you know that you're that close
I
must have
know.
just been excruciating. Because I imagine it's like all you're thinking about. Because it's like it's game changing, isn't it? In
Yeah,
terms of career. So it's yeah, that must have been really difficult.
day and night. Yeah, I couldn't. I just couldn't relax. I mean, you'd think when you get something like that, you jump for joy and you're just
Hmm.
raw emotion, roaring and just
Hmm.
celebrating. But it was more like this wave of relief. I like just kind of
Yeah,
lay down on my bed, like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
yeah.
This is amazing. And yeah, oh my God. And it was that relief of releasing
Hmm.
the tension of that 6 weeks. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
no, it was I can still feel it now. Even thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, those are the days.
So like that does lead on to what I did want to ask you next, which is it's about uncertainty. So of course, like
Mm,
this, any sort of actor, performer, artist's life. It's I suppose anyone's life really, but really when you're sort of betting on yourself on the on short term projects, it's not like a full time job where you're going to be on something for the next 25 years or whatever, and you're going to retire
yeah.
after this. It brings about it so much uncertainty. We don't always know what we're going to be doing 3 months down the line or all that sort of stuff. How are you with that? Has that been a journey of acceptance, or is it, or do you thrive off that kind of buzz?
Well, that's a really, really great question. And I fear that I might have a disappointing answer to this question because I think I've gone the opposite way. I think when I was younger, the uncertainty was fine.
Yeah.
I'm 21 years old. I'm coming out of drama school. I have no expectations. I have no plans, and I'm ready to just accept whatever the universe throws at me.
Yeah.
And I think when it came to rejection as well, auditions and
Hmm.
getting rejected, when I when I first started out, I just sort of had this blind confidence, and that really was absolutely fine.
Hmm.
And then as time went on, I'm 31 now. And I started thinking about the future and things like this, and I wanted to make plans, and I started, I think, slowly to let the tension of the unpredictable nature of the industry
Hmm.
kind of filter in, and it has been through finding other outlets for my creative work, such as I'm
Hmm.
sure we're going to talk about Quinn when we get onto it. But really, I mean, I started trying to look in to get into audiobook narration,
Mm,
and I started a little kind of podcast thing that is discontinued at the moment because I've just been too busy, which is amazing. But I was trying to diversify my income streams than just
mm,
waiting for the phone to ring, because that is what I find is the most difficult thing about being an actor, particularly.
mm.
I'm fortunate in the sense that I love to write. Again, we'll get on to Quinn, and there's a big writing component of that.
Yeah.
But having no necessarily not a creative outlet without that phone ringing and you auditioning for something, I think over time that started to be difficult for me.
Mm,
And I am a very creative person. I have a real impulse to do something, and I think that everything happens for a reason. And the fact that that tension built in me and I wasn't always being able to satisfy that creative urge, I think that the writing side, and I write just for pleasure as well,
mm,
that writing outlet has been probably the most important thing for me. And it
yeah.
connects me to being an artist
Mm.
when I'm unable to do it through my acting.
Mm. I love that. That was such an amazing answer. It was connecting with your art rather than the payoff or the, life or death depending on somebody else's actions. It's just you're in it for the art, and that's the way it is. I absolutely love that. So we will talk about Quinn, I promise you. Uh, I am I'm very interested to hear more about your passion for writing.
Mm.
And you say so. Obviously, there is a component of writing Quinn audios there, but you
Yeah.
mentioned also writing privately, writing separately. Has that been a thing that's gone on, underlying your acting career as well?
Yes, it has. I mean, not professionally yet.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely, well, I mean, again, other than Quinn,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but that is a big aspiration of mine now. I, I remember I went away and I did uh, my second job out of drama school. I did this show called Olympus, and it's a little bit of a cult show. It's a little bit janky in places, but I loved it. I had the best time. I went over to Vancouver and I filmed it for 6 months, and I thought, wow,
Amazing.
this is life. I mean, this is crazy. And when I got back from that trip, there was a natural pause. I didn't know if there was going to be a second season. I didn't know what was next, and I I really distinctly remember having this idea. I just had this idea for this film. And it was so amorphous. Just as all, I think, budding writers who don't really know that they're a writer yet, it was just this mess of ideas. And so I sat down and I went to Foyle's bookstore in London on Tottenham Court Road. And I went to the cafe at the top and I went there for weeks and weeks. And I just sat with my notebook and I tried to understand. I just tried to even understand what the idea was that I was having. And it was kind of because there was no pressure on it, it was a really fun experience. It was sort of
Mm,
weird. It took a lot of back and forth, rewriting the same thing again and again and again. And
mm,
eventually I started to form what this idea really was. And then I started to write a screenplay about it, and then I got another job, and
mm,
things moved away. But I remember it was in that time that I realized this is what I want to do when I'm not working, in inverted
mm,
commas,
mm.
as an actor. This is, and it just came. It wasn't. I sat down one day and thought I want to be a writer. It was just this thing was in me, and I wanted to get it out in
Yeah.
some way. And that's really what's permeated the writing thing. I do Morning Pages for anyone who's familiar with the Artist's Way. It's a great book and a sort of process about connecting to your inner artist. But one of the
Mm,
fundamental exercises that you do straight away is every morning, and I don't do this every morning. I wish I did. I'm not as infallible as that. But you get up and you just write 3 pages with a pen in a notebook of
mm,
stream of consciousness. No
mm,
agenda, no one's ever going to read it. You're never going to read it again. Just stream of consciousness, whatever is inside. It could just be making a list of the things you need to do today. It can be writing down the dream you had from last night, or working out some emotion that you've got that you don't fully understand, or whatever it is. And I just did that, and through that process, I really connected to this inner artist or whatever
mm,
it is in me that wants to be creative.
mm.
Um, So yeah, that's a very long answer to
No,
that.
no, it's a fantastic answer, and I think I definitely I've played around with journals before,
Mm,
and I keep a diary, but it's when you get busy, it just turns out to be like I
yeah.
did this, I went to the shops, I rushed, you know, and you sort of hope for sort of David Sedaris kind of like gold,
Yeah.
but it is an interesting concept of getting that kind of. I think like Tim Ferriss calls it like your monkey mind or something of
Mm,
getting all of that fuzz out and
yeah.
then you're connecting with yourself, but then also you're allowing your brain space to breathe, and it opens up to where the thoughts that really want to come out in that subconscious can come out.
I really feel that. I
Yeah.
super, super, yeah, acutely feel that. If I have things on my mind, I have to write lists. If I've got things to do, I have to write. Firstly, I've got a terrible memory. So if I think, oh, I've got to do that, I have to write it down. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. So I like to keep lists, but it's just this crazy thing. I can even have a list on my phone,
Mm,
but if I sit down and I write it out freehand and just say, okay, this is everything I've got to do. These are my priorities. I'm going to do this today.
mm,
I'm going to allot tomorrow time for these two and whatever. Suddenly, that if you call it monkey mind, that's what Tim Ferriss calls it.
mm,
It just relaxes, and suddenly I'm able to feel relaxed. And only when I'm
mm,
feeling relaxed can I really do I feel like I can truly be creative. Maybe that's not true. It's not necessarily relaxed, but it's without that noise because
mm,
sometimes the best things I'll write, or the things that I'm like, wow, there was something in there, is when I'm feeling very emotional.
mm.
If I'm very angry about something or very upset about something, it's often I there's a little twisted artist part of me that goes, oh, this is going to be good for some writing this.
I think, do you know, I think that's one of the healthiest things about writing, but also just performing as well in general, is
Yeah,
that if you have something that, that's going wrong, or this, something happens to you, later down the line, you may come across a character who's feeling a lot of pain and you think, I've got this. I know
yeah,
exactly where this is
absolutely.
coming from. Or in the sense of, writing, of course, you think, well, this is, at least use it. At least you get
Yeah,
something out of it. So,
yeah.
Quinn, a platform that you have, without a shadow of a doubt, taken by storm. um, I do not think there's a single person listening to Quinn audios that doesn't count you as one of their favourites.
Oh,
it is so wonderful to see, and that's creators included. So, like, how did Quinn come about for you? Like, what drew you into to begin making audios?
okay. Well, I give you the most honest answer that I can. So as we said at the beginning of this, I was in a place where I felt like I need to diversify my income. I need to find
Mm,
a way of using what I love doing. I don't want to go and just say, okay, I'm going to go do some other job. I want to try, if I can, to stay in the realm of what I love doing. And so I thought about, I felt like I never really had given voice acting a proper shot, and I was interested in trying. So like all people who are a bit financially constrained, I started a podcast, which much to the chagrin of my partner, I basically said, look, I want to try and narrate some classic novels, and
mm,
I just want to see how that does, see if there's any response, see whether this is something that I could do or potentially monetize. And she was super supportive. So I read Pride and Prejudice, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is a tough book, by the
yeah.
way. I did not know what to expect. So I started doing these episodes and I wanted to promote it. So I started doing a bit of social media stuff around it.
Mm,
And it was a lot of work. I got so much respect now for audiobook narrators because especially if they are, audio engineering the thing themselves, it was a
mm,
big, big learning curve for me. Um, but it was something I was channeling a lot of my energy into, a lot of time, and just trying to figure this whole thing out. And after halfway through reading Pride and Prejudice, someone who had seen one of my Instagram posts, I think the post that actually got to Quinn was me reading a section of my favorite book. which is the
Mm,
Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which I'm always talking about because I just think it's stunning book. And I was reading a section of it because it's my favorite book, and I think it went mini viral for me, tens of thousands of watches or what have you. And someone who liked the podcast I was doing sent it to Quinn, and I went on Instagram. I'm really not very good at social media. And so I just happened to go into Instagram that day and look in my messages and go into my requested messages. Before then, I didn't even know there was a requested inbox. It was just like fate thing. And I clicked on it and I saw that there was a message from Quinn. And I clicked on it and they got in touch and they said, we would like you to work with us. They were very straightforward. They came out with an offer straight away. And I immediately thought, this is a scam. This can't be
yeah,
real.
yeah,
Clicked on them. They've got, 200,000 followers on. I just had no idea about them. And I immediately got back in touch with Caroline, the CEO, and I said, yes, please, I would like
yeah.
to do this very much. Um, and from then it was, the adventure started. I mean, when I sat down to write my first audio, I was like, okay, I guess here we go. And
Mm,
I just started. It came out. I recorded it. I edited it together, and the whole time thinking, what does this mean? If
yeah,
I put this out in the world, not that there was anything, wrong with it at all.
mm,
It was like, once this is out in the world, this is out in the world. Because for anyone who does listen to Quinn, it is very erotic content, and I was like, well, here we go, and I
yeah,
sent it. And I got such a wonderful response to my first audio. The Carolina Quinn, she was really, really happy with it. All the comments I got was so, so positive.
mm,
And the community on Quinn, like,
mm,
blows me away.
mm,
Genuinely blows me away. The engagement, the loyalty, the support, the humor of
mm,
the community on Quinn is just like unparalleled. And yeah, and all that is to say, and this might be a follow-up question of yours, but I really, it was just an venturing into the unknown that I
mm,
was a bit afraid of, but I was also completely committed to. And
mm,
having been on the platform now for literally almost a year to the day, I have gone from being a little bit, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into here, to really proud,
yeah,
genuinely, really
right.
proud to be a part of the Quinn community and, providing this space for listeners that we do.
Mm. I think you hit the nail on the head, and especially just following on to what you said about the community. I have never known such support and
No.
loving group of people, like immediately as well. Like and just want to rally around you and celebrate all of these things that we've got in common. And I think as creators and as voice actors, I think we're in a really exciting time where you're actually allowed to do this as a job. Like, it feels like, and for
Oh,
me,
okay.
I feel like I'm getting away with something. You know, like,
Me too. Me too. Honestly, I for the first like 6 months, I was like,
yeah,
this can't go on forever, surely. I'm having too much fun.
yeah,
I finally got that security, that
mm,
that regularity of work,
mm,
that is the toughest thing about being an artist, is not knowing
mm,
where your next paycheck is and not being able to plan. And
mm,
or at least you can absolutely plan, but I was struggling to, because
mm,
I never felt like I could go on holiday. I'm sure that I'm not alone in saying
yeah,
this as a creative, because even if I got a big paycheck, I was like, okay, but when's the next one? I have
yeah,
no idea. So
yeah,
um Quinn has just been, it's so good. I feel like they're so good to their creators. I feel like they
mm,
run the platform in such a positive, straightforward space, and the
mm,
community. I just don't know how they got the community they got. I honestly don't. For something that is erotic content, traditional
yeah.
erotic content, I do not imagine has the same
No.
supportive community that we have.
No, No, I think that's true. Was it Hotel Mishap was your first audio?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
when you sat down and started, okay, I'm going to write something. I'm going to give this a go. And you've done, maybe you dipped your toe into a little bit of research, listening to what is out there, listening to that kind of thing. Um, when you sat down and wrote it, was that like a revelation of like, oh, hang on a second, I love it. Like this can be like another creative outlet for me aside from the acting as well. Because I know that it can often be a little bit different from when we write for pleasure or we're working on that screenplay that we believe in, and then having to sit down and write something with a purpose immediately. You've got a deadline. It's like a different skill, and it can feel a little different sometimes.
I completely agree. But I think it was liberating, actually.
Mm,
Genuinely, I felt it was liberating because instead of having this massive thing that I cannot sit down and finish in one sitting,
mm,
I say finish, do a first draft in one sitting, and I can agonize over, this scene again and again, and this line of dialogue again and again, and all that, nonsense, really.
mm,
I would sit down and, I got the job and it was available as soon as possible.
mm,
You can do up to three a month was what I started with.
mm.
And I was like, well, I'm going to do three this month. So I sat down and I was like, well, I've got to get one done ASAP.
Yeah,
And so when I sat down, almost the constraint of the time allowed me to release the constraint of over analytical mind.
yeah,
And so I sat down and, I just literally tried to think. I didn't do too much research for my first audio, I don't think. I've subsequently done a lot more. But my
mm,
first audio, I was like, well, what scenario do I think is sexy?
mm,
And I I've always had, I'm definitely not alone in this. I know from the community it's one of the favorite tropes, but I think the one bed trope is just really sexy. Oh, there's two of us. We're not supposed to, necessarily sleep together,
mm,
but there's only one bed. And through some mishap at the hotel, hence
yeah,
the title, there's only one bed available. And okay, well, we'll just sleep next to each other as friends. We're
mm,
colleagues. We can do that. But the lights go off and
mm,
things happen. So,
yeah,
and I thought that that was a sexy scenario, and so that's what I wrote, and it got such a positive reaction on the platform that
mm,
it gave me so much confidence to investigate. Okay, well, what else do I think is an interesting dynamic or something
mm,
that I think is interesting to play with? Because at the end of the day, because I'm writing it, I have to connect to it. I have
mm,
to, otherwise, then no one else is going to believe it if I don't believe it.
yeah,
I think that's true of acting. I think that's true of any artistry, really. If I don't believe it, if I don't feel something when I'm
mhm,
writing it or performing it, then I can't really expect anyone else to.
yeah. Yeah, I totally get you. I'm totally with you for that. So with producing, I think you're on weekly now, like weekly audios, right?
That's right.
Have you-
Yeah.
So with that, producing content so consistently, it comes with a routine, right?
Yeah.
So what is like a typical day in the life of Tom on a Quinn recording day?
Well, it's changing a little bit because for the first almost year. I was doing everything by myself. My fiance now, Cara, she is also a producer, so she will listen to it, give me some feedback, maybe change this, do this,
Yeah,
and she's like my quality control manager
amazing.
because I don't want it to go out into the world, completely unchecked by anyone else. But it used to be. I sit down, I write, I go into the recording booth and I record, and then I have to edit the whole thing, put in the sound effects. But now I have an amazing audio engineer slash editor who helps me.
Mhm,
So it's helped relieve uh, at least 2 days work out the process for me
mhm,
because I was again that's where my analytical finicky brain came back in. It was like, oh, but maybe I can shave half a second off this little
yeah,
gap here, or maybe this word just needs lowering, and it ended up taking up the majority of my time, and it was not the thing that I loved the most. I loved the writing and I
mhm,
loved the performing of it. So nowadays, what it looks like is on a Tuesday morning, Monday, Tuesday morning, I get up, I look at my long list on my notes app of all the little ideas I've had for potential scenarios, and I find something in there that I feel, ooh, there's something in that today. And I sit down and I write out the whole audio longhand from start to finish. And I write almost all the lines of the female character. So
Oh,
for
really?
anyone who is not who's not yet on Quinn and listening, the way that Quinn works is that the listener, you, are the main character. And so there are no actual verbalized lines for the female protagonist or male protagonist, depending on who is it's centered for.
Mm.
Um, so I say all the words, but often we're having a conversation and I'm reacting through to what you say, and through my reaction, you infer what your character said, etc. And yeah, when I'm sat down to write it, I write out pretty much all the female character's lines because I feel like it helps me respond appropriately and it respond in a way that hopefully I can then check against that and say, okay, does this really help the listener infer what they supposedly just said?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I do that pretty much in one sitting. Sometimes I have a little break, especially when we get to the spicy stuff. Sometimes I have a little, okay, I've done the hard part really, which is setting up the scenario, building the world, building the story and the
Yeah.
dynamics and everything. And now we're at where that plays out in the erotic content. And then yeah, I'll write that. And that's that. I try and keep that. Okay, that's one day. That's what I do on one of the days. And then on a subsequent day, I will go into my recording booth and I will perform it. I will make edits to the script I've written on the fly. So while I'm in there, if I'm reading something and I feel, no, I can word this better, or this doesn't quite feel right, or now I've said that, it feels a bit blah, 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 I will just change it then and there. And once I've got a semi-cohesive recording, I send it to my lovely audio engineer, and that's sort of how it works. It comes back, and then I do a final sort of kind of chief editor pass, I guess, which is just
Mm.
a few tiny tweaks to make sure I'm really happy with it. Send it to my quality control manager, and then yeah, and then it's released next week. But the great thing for me doing one every week about having an audio engineer help me now is it means that I can actually get ahead.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
before it was a real like yeah, because I also have auditions coming in, I have other commitments and stuff, and it was yeah, it was difficult for me to get ahead in audios. I think there's a lot of creators out there who just are
Mm.
on their next one. And I
Yeah.
really wanted, you know, if I go to on holiday for 2 weeks, I want to go on holiday for 2 weeks.
Yes.
I don't want to
Yeah.
be thinking about work at all.
Yeah.
I need that space. So now I'm getting ahead as well, which is great. So it means that when it comes to a week and I can look at the ones that I have ready to go and I'm like, oh, what do I think would suit this week? Or what do I think is in the zeitgeist at the moment? Or
Yeah.
what's a good contrast to the last one that I released? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's my process at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And first of all, congratulations on your engagement. I
Oh,
saw it on
thank you so
Instagram.
much.
It was yeah, huge congratulations. It's amazing, and I love the fact that that's your quality control pass as well.
No.
It's amazing.
And she's
Um,
very good at it.
yeah, this when you said about you were talking about writing the lines of a character that we don't hear, right?
Yes.
I I really like that take. When did you first start doing that, or have you always done it? Was it that just what came naturally to you?
You know, it's so funny. You know, for talking all this talk about writing, I think I was in such a bamboozled state when Quinn came calling originally
Yeah,
that I the first audios I did, I actually didn't write. I had the concept and I sort of did a beat sheet. I was like, okay,
yeah,
this is going to happen, 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 and then I improvised it in the recording booth,
hmm
and I ended up finding it quite a painful process
Mm,
because I would say something or I wouldn't know what to say next, or I didn't like what I just said. And I'd go, because I wasn't
mm,
sure, I'd go back and I'd listen to it while I was in the recording. And I'd go, okay, no, I
mm,
don't like that. Maybe I'll try it again. And, oh, I
mm,
did like that. Let me go listen. And it was a very stop start, unrewarding, type of performance process.
mm,
And so I got a bit frustrated with that. And I thought, well, what I'm just going to try and write out the whole thing. And as soon as I sat down to write out the whole thing, I think immediately I started writing the female characters' lines.
mm,
It just, because I'm used to now this sort of stream of consciousness-esque style of writing, it seems silly not to continue the stream of consciousness as it appeared to me as her words, to not write them out. You know, she's saying them in my mind, they're
mm,
coming naturally. So I will write them down
mm,
uh, just as part of the process. It might be technically unnecessary. It might take slightly longer, but for me, it makes it a
mm,
more enjoyable, rounded experience of writing.
mm.
And that, yeah, that is just, it just works for me. I'm not saying that everyone should do that, but
Yeah.
that it just works for me. Yeah.
No, do you know, I think it's a fantastic idea. And while you were speaking, my head was spinning, going like that makes because what you were saying about when you used to just write out the beats and improvise it. To be honest, that's how I've done most of mine. Is that I try and just get in
Yep.
the zone and go for it. And there has been occasions where it has been like a little bit like maybe I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed and I'm starting to and I think oh no you don't you just sound annoyed or you just sound like and you do just sort of it makes it a little bit as you say unrewarding in some aspects and it really has made me interested to go that not just do as much as you can to really create that world ahead of time. Sounds like a good idea.
No, well, I mean, it worked for me. And if you're having the same sort of
Yeah.
experience, then definitely give it a go because
Mm,
it might be a more rewarding. Because there's something about, there is something about slowing down, and
mm,
there is something about writing longhand. You
mm,
can't rush ahead. When we can speak at a million miles an hour, and you sometimes the brain just can't
mm,
quite catch up. Whereas when you're writing, you know what you're writing, but it takes longer to actually write it. So as you're writing it, your brain is already sort of relaxing and thinking, okay, well, this is probably what the response is. This is a
mm,
funny response. And then
mm,
you write that response out. And, while that's coming, well, I wonder what she says back. Oh, maybe she'd say that. That's actually quite. And
yeah.
it feels much more, for me at least, it feels
Mm,
much more fluid.
mm,
And yeah, and I really enjoy. I think I think probably my favorite part is the writing part
yeah.
these days. I just find it, sit down with a cup of coffee and an idea and
Yeah.
see where it goes because I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of doing it in a bookshop and looking around and thinking nobody knows what I'm doing here. No, nobody knows the naughtiness that is going on.
So true. It's the same with people wearing their headphones and listening to
Yeah.
Quinn. No one knows what's going on in those headphones.
I must say that I was once at an audio came out once and I was at the gym and I always like to just listen to the first 2 minutes when it comes out just to make sure that it sounds okay
Yeah.
and just like that. And I have my big picture of my face on the thing, and I was on like the benches and I just put my phone on the bench and I got a text so the screen lit up and it's just a big picture of my own face, me stood next to it, and everyone like what like you know what I mean? It
That's
caught the eye of some people.
fantastic.
It's like that guy's just listening to himself.
No, that's so brilliant. I don't think I've had any instances where I've been caught listening to Quinn in public yet, but I have had one person come up to me and say, "Oh my God, are you Tom York from Quinn?" And that was like, okay, now I've made it.
That's fantastic. So, I was going to ask. So, have you any advice for creators, fellow Quinn creators who are looking to, produce better and better work? Perhaps they've just started, or perhaps they're just constantly trying to improve. I just wondered if you had any advice for those, and that is definitely asking for a friend.
Oh, I happily give any advice that I
Yeah.
have. I think that I think that for me, look, again, people come onto the app for different reasons.
Mm,
Like, and they're going to have different tastes. And so what works for me may well not work for other people. But I think I think it comes down to the story and the scenario are probably the most important thing. You know,
mm,
setting the scene, creating the dynamic so that it's going to be sexy when the sexy part starts. Because you know, people enjoy the erotic side of the content, but I think they enjoy it so much more in the context of the
mm,
story and the scenario and the dynamic that you set up. So I always put that at the front and center, even if it ends up being a kind of quote unquote quickie sort of audio, there still needs to, okay, who are these people to each other? And is the fact that it's a quickie because they're so familiar with each other? Are they just two people who are in a relationship and they've woke up on a morning and you know they're hot for each other? And how can I convey their closeness, their
mm,
relationship a short amount of time, so that by the time the erotic stuff starts happening, we know who these people are, and
mm,
we can imagine ourselves as one of them.
mm.
So I put that so front and center. I think you have to find it sexy. You know, if you're writing it for a friend, I just don't think that works.
Yeah.
I just think that's the case with everything. Like things that are written by committee for needless notes and stuff, they never have that sort of, you know, rawness, for lack
Mm,
of a better word, that things that are written by someone with a sole focus. And it might, you know, that might have some rough edges, but
mm,
at least people, especially in this sort of content, they want to connect to someone's voice, someone's like idea of what this, you know, this
mm,
erotic idea is like. Those are the two biggest. You know, you can
mm,
always improve. You know, audio stuff. Like you can get a really good microphone, and you can get good software, and you can get like stuff to help tidy it up, which I'm sure as someone who's done loads of voice stuff, you're familiar with already.
mm.
But I just think my first audio hotel mishap is my most listened to audio. It still gets listens, you know, regularly.
Mm.
And that one I had an old microphone. Didn't sit down and write it. I improvised it. I had no idea what I was doing. There were no, you know, spicy sound effects in it or anything. It was just the most raw, basic first attempt thing.
Mm.
But the story and the dynamic still gets people.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that that shows that that's the most important thing for me because as I've gone on, I've added loads of different things. I do binaural recording now, so I have another mic. I have two microphones, and I can
Oh,
whisper in
nice.
someone's ear, and you
Yeah.
know, people like that. And so it will come through only one side of their headphones, and it feels like I'm in there, you know, tickling them there. So, you know, I've done that. I've added spicy sound effects. I tried to build more sound effects into world building and what have
Yeah.
you. But all of that stuff is secondary.
I'm very eager to know more about your, was it binaural recording? So,
Yes. Yeah.
so you have like a two, so is that so
Yeah.
you can do like stereo? Is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I have, you know,
Yeah.
probably people can't see because this is a
Yeah.
podcast, but I've got one microphone
Yeah.
on my left here. I have exactly the same
Yeah.
microphone on my right. And when they're both sort of equidistant from me, it sounds
Yeah.
just like, you know, normal balanced audio.
Yeah.
But as the erotic content starts to hot up, you know,
Yeah.
and I get closer into this microphone, it will only really
Yeah.
be picked up in one of the ears. And so it, you know, it triggers that ASMR thing for listeners, or they
Yeah.
feel like I'm, you know, depending on the quality of the headphones, I get quite a lot of comments of it. Like it feels like my breath is
Oh
literally
wow.
on and so I think that that's obviously
Yeah, it's
quite
brilliant.
stimulating.
That's absolutely fantastic. What a great idea.
Well, it's not my idea. I can't take. I think Nordio, who is the for anyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
the crown king of Quinn. I think he's been doing binaural audio for quite a long
Mm.
time. So it was through thinking, oh, he does it. I wonder
Yeah.
how you do that.
Yeah.
And then I got the stuff and I
Yeah.
learned how to do it.
Yeah.
And my listeners seem to really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Sorry, that was my engineering side coming out and being really
No,
good.
that's
I thought
great.
I think what you were saying about story and character being the most important, I think that has to be true, as you were saying, because I think that is what sets it apart. And I think also from you think back to like traditional erotic content, specifically ones, I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but specifically those that you find that are directed for males,
Hmm.
and your normal internet stuff, all that sort of stuff. That's without that character and without that story mostly,
Yeah,
and I think that you can it sort of lacks a quality. It lacks a carefulness, a caringness to that side of things, and I think that is the one of the reasons, in my own personal opinion, why Quinn is just on another level.
yeah,
It
I
brings
agree.
so much more to it. It brings so much more of a human side to it as well, and so much more
Yeah.
fun.
Well,
You know.
I also think I think that there is I think that firstly I think there's something for everyone on Quinn.
Mhm.
If you're just looking for something that's not traditional erotic content, there is so much available of all different levels of intensity is a
Yeah.
nice way to put it. You can go as far on the spectrum as you really like. So if you're looking for something spicy, you're the main character. You are centered in this situation. It really is made for you. And so I think that's really hot. But also, a lot of people come onto the platform just looking for a way to maybe reconnect to themselves and that
Mm.
part of themselves, because maybe for whatever reason, maybe they've had had a child and gone through pregnancy and what have you, and maybe feeling a little bit separated from that sexy side of themselves. They're coming to that. Perhaps they've had something really difficult happen in the past, and they want to be able to enjoy their partner in the way that they wish they could, but they
Mm.
don't feel necessarily safe. I've had so many amazing comments of people who have come to the audios, which is an incredibly safe environment. There's no one else there. It's just a voice. There is no pressure on you to do anything. And you can decide over time how far you want to go, what you want to explore. And I think it's a great tool for that.
Mm.
I also think there's something really kind of beautiful actually about the idea that uh, mostly, I think the creators write their own content or create
Mm.
their own content. There are writers as well as some great writers out there, but I think there is something kind of beautiful that here are these men who are deliberately trying to make this content and hold this space for women.
Mm.
I think that there's something in that that feels very positive.
Mm.
Um, and I think, yeah, I really like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think it was beautifully put as well. And I
Thanks.
think that's something that I haven't. This is something that I haven't actually touched on with anyone yet. So this is just off the top of my head, asking you this. Um, do you think that this has improved you as a man, as a person, as a partner? Has this, has writing this, getting into the headspace of Quinn Audios, and getting in touch with that side of yourself that perhaps you weren't all that familiar with before, has it, changed you, adapted you, allowed you
I
to
think
grow?
so. I think so. I really do think so. I think there's lots of aspects that it probably has improved me as a person on,
Mm.
but I think the clearest one for me is the clearest indication of it is I'm really proud to talk about the work with Quinn, whereas at the
Mm.
beginning I was sort of bashful, or oh, I'm doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a bit out there. It's a bit kind of crazy. It's erotic content, blah blah blah. But now I don't know. I don't I'm someone who I don't believe that there should be shame around sex.
yeah. Mm.
That's my personal feeling and my belief. And so holding a space for people to connect to themselves
Mm.
in an imaginative way, um, I think it's a kind of a wonderful thing. And the fact of realizing that and holding that within myself, I think has got to be, I would class that as an improvement.
Mm.
I think I think it's improved. It's improved my life as well, which also improves me as a person. I'm
Yeah.
less stressed. Um, yeah, I think I'd have to think about the question some more to give you a really truthful,
Mm.
succinct answer. But I think it's probably improved me in more ways than I can articulate in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, if I do say so myself. The,
Yeah. What do you feel that? Do you feel like it has improved
the,
you as a person?
Definitely, and I think just because I don't know what side of myself I tap into to do this, but I certainly find myself being a lot more kind of understanding, like caring in a way as well also. And I think this just this idea of like, I mean, also I think from the like productivity aspect of being able to work on something every single week and being able
Mm,
to put my heart and soul into something and share it with the community and get feedback from it and all of that. I think that has improved my mindset towards work, which I think
mm,
makes me a more positive person
yeah.
around all of my life. But I think in terms of creating, I think definitely, because I think I'm having to access parts of myself that I tried to shut away so long.
Mm,
You know, I tried, we all see all these, especially like certain influences and everything. And you think, oh, as a guy, I've got to shut up and just crack
mm,
on with something. If I don't want to go to the gym this morning, I have to shut that down. And it doesn't, your feelings don't matter. You've got to get stuff done. Whereas for Quinn, you have to go, okay, let me really access my feelings
yeah,
now. What do I find sexy? What do I find
yeah.
funny? What do I think I can connect with another person over? And it's sort of allowing that part of your head to open up again. And
I think there's something kind of I think there's something kind of weirdly, amazingly masculine in inverted commas about the idea of servicing female pleasure.
yeah,
I find I find a really interesting connection to, my whatever my masculinity
mm,
is in that idea. I think that that's way more masculine, again in inverted commas, than alpha dog behavior. I'm the boss. I never feel pain. I do
mm,
this. I think there's something about serving, yeah, women or serving female pleasure. In particular, to me, I
mm,
find this a very
mm,
um, interesting dynamic masculine from a masculinity perspective.
yeah,
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 it makes me feel good.
yeah. No, I totally get you. I'm totally with you on that one. To finish us off on this episode, I was wondering if I could throw to you some quick fire style questions, which are a little bit more vague, just to help us get to know a little bit more about the Tom behind the screen and behind the mic.
Yeah, of course.
What's a challenge you're currently facing?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm starting to plan a wedding, so so that is a challenge I'm currently facing in terms of a mental space sort of
Yeah.
thing. But what challenge? I think my real challenge though is that I'm facing a challenge of trying not to put too much pressure on myself. I
Mm,
think that again we just touched on it there. I think that I've been putting too much pressure on myself, and I've been in a sort of state of, I just need to get through this. I just need to
mm,
make sure this is as good as possible. I just need to get this done today. I just need to make sure. And eventually, over time, it's been a sort of process of I just need to get through today. And
mm,
I, I, I really want to distance myself from that. I want to come back to a feeling of, gosh, I'm in such a wonderful,
yeah.
position. I'm so fortunate, and I want to be able to feel the joy and
Yeah.
the space of that of my life. Yeah,
Mm,
and that's my challenge at the moment is decompressing.
yeah. Yeah. What does downtime look for you right now?
Downtime. I have a rather extensive board game collection.
Really? Oh,
I really
nice.
do. I really, really do. So me and my fiance, we play a lot of board games for the night. Recently, we've been watching more TV, but
Yeah.
we try most evenings to sit down and play something together because I think it helps. It helps communication. We often
Yeah.
play on a team. There are lots of cooperative board games now, which means you don't have to go to bed angry at each other because the other one screwed you over. So we play a lot of cooperative games together, and yeah, I always feel really satisfied and good and relaxed after playing a game, as opposed to I have recently been scrolling a bit too much, and I really don't want to scroll on my
Mm,
phone. It doesn't feel good for me.
mm. Yeah. No, I get it's difficult as well, especially because if it's part of like the work as well, isn't it?
I
Replying to people
know.
and all that stuff, and then you get sucked in, and yeah, it's a tricky one. What has you excited currently?
I'm going on holiday.
Very nice. Where are you going?
I'm going to Portugal for nearly two
Amazing.
weeks. I'm going with my brother, my best friend, and my fiance, and we're going to have such a good time. And we haven't been on holiday in so I think yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really, really excited to just go and not think about anything work related. I'm going to
Mhm.
help use that as some decompression time, and it's my job when I get back to stay somewhat in
Yeah.
that zone. And oh, yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, I bet it just gives you time to reset, doesn't it? Just totally
That's what I
reset,
need.
and then you can start fresh when you get back and work out exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the last question, and this is so I've been asking this question for the last two series of this podcast, and it's everybody's most hated question
Oh
because
no.
it doesn't really make any sense, but I like it myself. Uh,
Okay, okay, bring it.
what do you wish you were asked more?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Would you like to write a screenplay for this multi-million pound project we've got coming up? That I
Yeah.
would love to be asked. What do I wish I was asked more? Oh, that's such a tough question. Because I try in my life to not want too much from other people. Like that is
Mm,
a sort of a subconscious goal, because obviously when you're in the somewhat of public position in terms of like I'm producing content for people
mm,
that a lot of people listen to, or I'm an actor in something that's watched by a lot of people. I've sort of tried to train myself to not want a specific reaction from people. So now in a
mm.
position where you have asked me to want a specific reaction from people, I am really at a loss to answer it. How do you get your hair looking that good? I'll take that one.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like it. I like it.
What
Someone
other answers have you had out of curiosity?
there's always the funny ones. So it's like, oh, can I pay you more or something like that? I wish I was asked
Yeah.
that. And there's had some really deep ones. Just about like checking in. A lot of sort of like people wanting to not necessarily ask about work or projects or things like that,
Mm,
but more just like different variations of just like how are you doing, how are you coping with all of this, or
mm,
and that just kind of like checking in, a lot of it revolving around friendship actually, which I think says a lot about our day and age when we're posting things on social media and going, oh, look at me, I've done this, and then really
mm,
craving to someone to just ask, like, go for a coffee with someone and just say like, how are you doing, like how are you, like
mm.
how's your mum or whatever, and so I always find that quite interesting. But I think it was Rich Miller, who's a fantastic audiobook narrator and podcast host of his own, and he threw that question around at me, and I had nothing, and it was so
It's
embarrassing.
hard, isn't it? Yeah, it's a tough question to ask, to answer. Yeah, I think that because I'm ironically, because of the interview format of this,
Yeah,
I'm much rather asking questions than answering questions. If someone asks about me, I'll sort of skirt over it as a tendency and try and get the questions back onto them, because I
yeah,
find that a lot of people do like to talk. I
yeah.
just tend to be one of the more, yeah, quiet ones, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that is the case, well, thank you so much for doing this. Um,
My pleasure.
well, that just about does it for this episode of the Audiobook Club. All of Tom's socials and links can be found in the show notes, as well as more information on Amplify Audiobooks, who very kindly sponsored this podcast. Tom, it's been such a pleasure getting to chat with you. Thank you so much.
The feeling is reciprocated. Thank you so much, John. This was honestly so lovely, and it was really just like a chat. So thank you, and I hope people enjoy listening to it.
Frustrated by the royalty rates for your audiobook? Annoyed that when the digital distributors say 70% royalties, they actually mean 70% of 50% or 80% of 70%, neither of which is an actual 70%. Wishing there was a way to cut out the middleman? Yet, you want your audiobook listeners to have a smooth and positive experience, and a direct download sale from your website won't deliver that. We at Pro Audio Voices hear you. Out of our commitment to our author clients, we've created Amplify, a program that provides an actual 65% of the sales price that you set, that gives you access to your customers' names and emails so you can reconnect with them, and keeps you in the driver's seat. Check it out at proaudiovoices.com. You'll find Amplify in the marketing menu.